Hi everyone, welcome to another video of Mike's Geek Corner with your host, Mike Cabello. For this video, I'm going to review the swashbuckling animated show, The New Adventures of Zorro. It was produced by Filmation and aired weekly on CBS, debuting on Saturday, September 12th of 1981, and ended its run after only one season on Saturday, December 5th of 1981, with a total of 13 episodes. Based on the character created by Johnston Macaulay in the 1919 pulp story, The Curse of Cagliostro, this is the first animated iteration of Zorro, with arguably its most notable follow-up being the syndicated animated series from the late 90s that shares the same name of The New Adventures of Zorro. Throughout its 3-decade trajectory, Filmation delivered a good number of animated TV shows that became milestones in the annals of animation fandom, such as New Adventures of Superman, Aquaman, Adventures of Batman, Star Trek, Tarzan, Flash Gordon, and last but not least, He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. What makes New Adventures of Zorro distinct from the rest of Filmation's roster of animated shows, particularly those made during the 70s and early 80s, is the quality of its animation, which was done overseas in Japan, making it the only Filmation series that was animated outside America. Though it does use its share of stock footage, which was a common technique for Filmation due to budgetary purposes, New Adventures of Zorro's overall animation is much more fluid than most of their TV action-adventure installments. Though short-lived, it does deserve to be seen as one of Filmation's finest Saturday morning efforts, as it captures not only the excitement of the previous live-action versions of Zorro, like the 1940 Mark of Zorro film, and the Disney live-action TV show from the late 50s, but also the spirit of classic swashbuckler stories of literature and film. The 1980s had just dawned, and by this time Filmation had already established itself as one of the most prominent animation houses for television, alongside Hanna-Barbera and the Patty Freeling, later turned Marvel, as their practice of using stock footage to save production cost made them comfortably time-reliable for TV networks. Filmation had previously sold the animated shows Tarzan, Lord of the Jungle, and Flash Gordon to CBS, both based on popular IPs from the printed page and live-action cinema and TV, which drew competent viewership on Saturday mornings, and when the time came to sell CBS another show, Filmation sold Zorro to the network. The masked swashbuckler who fought oppression in early 19th century Old California was, as mentioned, first introduced in a 1919 pulp story, The Curse of Cagliostro, and shortly after made the jump to the silver screen in a silent film adaptation called The Mark of Zorro in 1920, starring Douglas Fairbanks, which made an impression on Bob Kane when he created Batman. And 20 years later, Golden Age movie star Tyrone Power donned the mantle in the 1940 remake. There was also an influential 1939 movie serial, Zorro's Fighting Legion, a live-action TV show from Disney starring Guy Williams that lasted from 1957 to 1961, and a profitable Italian film adaptation from 1975 starring the late French movie star Alain Delon, which inspired the creation of Richard Donner's Superman. Animation was the one medium Zorro had yet to be adapted to, and their property's fame was one that enticed CBS to take up on Filmation's offer, greenlighting 13 episodes. When production began in July of 1981, Filmation, who at this point had all its animated projects done in-house to keep American animators employed, was faced with the fact that because the networks were delaying the approval of scripts for their shows, Zorro was inevitably going to have to be animated in Japan, as there was going to be no other way to have the show on time while Filmation's workers were working on their other shows that needed to be finished. The 13 Zorro episodes were animated by the Japanese studio Tokyo Movie Shinsha, who had previously done the animated adaptations of the popular manga Lupin III. Filmation line producer Don Christensen went over to Japan to see that the show was produced correctly. The collaboration between the Western studio and the Eastern studio was not without its share of difficulties, but the result was ultimately a fruitful one, as it delivered top-quality animation not seen in any Filmation show before, as well as being Filmation's best-looking show at that point since Flash Gordon and Star Trek. The use of rotoscoping was utilized for the sword fights, which were also used for stock footage. For the character of Zorro, white lines had to be used to enclose the all-black attire. Most of the episodes were written by Arthur Brown Jr., who had TV shows on his resume such as The Count of Monte Cristo and Hawkeye and The Last of the Mohicans. And there's also writer Robbie London, who knew of fencing, was a reader of swashbuckler stories, and was a fan of the Disney Zorro show. Storyboard artists Michael Swanigan and Robert Lamp were involved with both Zorro and Black Star that same year. Most of the voice cast was made up of actors of Latin origin. Originally, Golden Age Argentinian actor Fernando Lamas was set to voice Don Diego de la Vega in his alter ego Zorro, but after having to cancel the job, Puerto Rican actor Henry Darrow, of High Chaparral fame, was given the dual role instead, and does a superb job capturing the laid-back foppish facade of Diego and Zorro's dashing panache. Darrow seems to exude the best of both Tyrone Power and Guy Williams' interpretation of Zorro. He would go on to reprise Zorro in the 1983 live-action sitcom Zorro and Son, and then as Zorro's father in New World's live-action Zorro show from the early 90s. Colombian actor Julio Medina, who has appeared on such shows as Gunsmoke, Chico and the Man, and Wonder Woman, lends a soft-speaking devil-may-care-like voice to Diego's assistant Miguel in his dual identity of Zorro's psychic, Amigo. Zorro having a psychic may be a concept some viewers could find quaint, but maybe if you consider that Zorro already had a whole legion who fought alongside him in the aforementioned serial Zorro's Fighting Legion, the idea of a sidekick might not feel so rare. Amigo's attire kind of resembles Douglas Fairbanks' clothing in his Mark of Zorro sequel, Don Q, Son of Zorro. For the nefarious Captain Ramon, whose design somewhat resembles Basil Rathbone's villainous Captain Esteban Pascal from the 1940 Mark of Zorro, Ernesto Macias, from Days of Our Lives, delivers suave menace. Returning to the Zorro franchise is Don Diamond as the old fish Sergeant Gonzalez after having played Corporal Reyes in the Disney Zorro show. Actress Cristina Avila plays our hero's smitten romantic interest, Maria. As Diego's father, Don Alejandro, El Paso and Western actor Carlos Rivas, who had also appeared in Disney Zorro, lends some assured, calm sage-like voice. And having that same year appear in the film adaptation of the Broadway play Suit, Socorro Valdez showcases a sexy, raspy voice for the femme fatale pirate, Lucia. Ray Ellis, who composed the music for the original '67 Spider-Man animated show, and producer Norm Prescott, who collaborated with Ellis previously on Filmation shows like Star Trek, Tarzan, New Adventures of Batman, Flash Gordon, and The Lone Ranger, team up once again in Zorro to deliver another piece of thrilling music that encompasses 1940s matinee heroic action and danger, while also effectively recycling music done previously for The Lone Ranger. The opening theme of Zorro is one that conveys high adventure with a good measure of Spanish-tinged flavor. New Adventures of Zorro debuted on September 12 of 1981 on CBS as part of the Tarzan Lone Ranger Zorro Adventure Hour. As it was customary in many of Filmation's shows for a character to give the viewers an educational message, Zorro gave the viewership information about California history, Spanish language, and regional culture at the end of each episode. Ultimately, New Adventures of Zorro was not renewed with new episodes after the 13 that were produced and aired due to Filmation's financial obstacles. I have vague memories of having first watched an episode or two of New Adventures of Zorro when it aired on CBS in 1981, and also a foggy recollection if this may have been my first exposure to Zorro, if not reruns of the Disney show. What is a more prominent memory of my early exposure of New Adventures of Zorro is a videotape my mom rented around early to mid-80s that featured the first 3 episodes and had them recorded for me. I seem to remember enjoying those 3 episodes. And even though at the time I preferred more stuff like Super Friends, He-Man, or Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, as I grew older I appreciated New Adventures of Zorro more, as I began to notice its quality and how it compared to other shows of its time. And when the whole series finally reached DVD in the late 2000s, in a set that also included the episodes of The Lone Ranger, I finally saw all the episodes and just loved them. They just have this pulpy streak that makes them appealing to any fan of Zorro and swashbuckling charms. Which now takes us to talk about the episodes themselves. We begin with the first episode, Three is a Crowd, which sees Zorro snatching away a treasure map from Captain Ramon that leads to stolen tax value that Lucia the pirate hid. A race to find this treasure ensues, as Zorro, with Amigo, sets sail to find the treasure for the benefit of the downtrodden, and Ramon, with his army, follow along for the treasure for the purposes of the greedy Governor-General. But will Lucia and her corsairs prove their search an added deadly obstacle? Zorro must use not only his impeccable swordsmanship, but also his wit to use one foe against the other. With the aspect of Zorro being a rogue, writer Arthur Brown Jr. adequately uses the Treasure Island type gimmick of reaching the buried treasure while also facing adversaries who also seek it. In the second episode, Flash Flood, Captain Ramon has built a dam with the purpose of taxing the villagers for water, but as an approaching fierce storm threatens to cause a flood due to the dam, it is up to Zorro to find a way to blow the dam and free Angelo, the leader of the people who are up in arms against the dam. Zorro aiding an antagonist of the establishment is something seen previously in the Disney Zorro pilot Presenting Señor Zorro, where Zorro also made plans to free ranchero Nacho Torres, who is in prison for protesting against high taxes. In the third entry, The Blockade, in the Los Angeles harbor, a French warship blockades 3 Spanish galleons carrying immigrants, furniture, and cannons. The governor and Captain Ramon ask Zorro to help in the matter, both being highly concerned with the furniture and the cannons, and Zorro agrees with the condition that the immigrants be treated fairly and given land to settle, and also to cut taxes in half. Though the governor and Ramon respond to Zorro with agreement, they secretly have other plans, and Zorro and Amigo must offer Lucia the pirate a proposition in order to help them incapacitate the French man-of-war and rescue the immigrants. This is another episode that has a parallel to a pirate story, that being Captain Blood, where the rogue title character is also asked by the corrupt King Willoughby to help save Port Royal from 2 French warships in exchange for a pardon. Zorro's reputation is being tarnished by Captain Ramon in the episode The Frame, as the latter is making it appear that Zorro is committing crimes against the people, which causes even his closest allies, such as his own father, to turn on him. It'll be up to a boy to help Zorro clarify to the people he protects to see the truth. Previously in the episode Double Trouble for Zorro from the Disney live-action show, Zorro's reputation was also at stake, as the devious Capitan Monasterio arranges for a criminal to impersonate Zorro, ruthlessly robbing the people, in an attempt to turn the people against the masked highwayman. We then turn to the episode Turnabout, as Captain Ramon hires a highly skilled masked swordmaster from Spain named Mario to pretend to befriend Zorro and Amigo, so to then make the capture of the latter two possible. Will Zorro be able to deduce Mario's intentions of delivering them to Ramon's clutches before it's too late? Before playing Zorro in the 1975 Italian version, Alain Delon, in the 1964 French swashbuckler film The Black Tulip, played a masked swordsman who robs aristocrats for money and thrill, but not for political or moral reasons, not too dissimilar to Mario's modus operandi. In the sixth entry, The Tyrant, after just arriving in California from Spain, corrupt General Dalamantes wastes no time in taking over the already draconian command of Captain Ramon as he implements an even more tyrannical tactic consisting basically of leaving Californians broke and ultimately imprisoned, which includes wealthy people like Don Alejandro de la Vega himself. Diego de la Vega, as Zorro, might find an unlikely ally in his nemesis Captain Ramon in ridding Los Angeles from Dalamantes' tyranny and free his father and others who were prey of his greed and reclaim his home. Similarly, Tyrone Power, some years after doing Mark of Zorro, starred in another swashbuckling blockbuster called Captain of Castile, in which he plays a Castilian caballero whose family become prisoners of an abusive tyrannical Holy Brotherhood and then decides to take matters into his own hands. Things get a bit shaky in the episode Terremoto, as Zorro and Amigo attempt to free protesters of the governor's high taxes who are being held at the Santa Catalan penal colony as they are being used to build a palace in this island. By disguising themselves as peasants, and let themselves be captured by Captain Ramon so to be taken to the colony, Zorro and Amigo, with the aid of the leader of the protesters, aim to put an end to this abuse of power. This is another episode that has certain layers that call to mind that classic swashbuckler story Captain Blood, such as doctor-turned-slave Peter Blood orchestrating an escape plan with his fellow prisoners from the British colony of Port Royal. The following episode, The Trap, showcases Zorro and Amigo seemingly eluding an ambush planned by Captain Ramon at the ruins of Fortress del Mar, involving an unguarded tax collection. However, once the two masked crusaders find the tax box and begin their exit from the fortress, they both become entangled within the fortress's crumbling structure and must find a way out fast before they are doomed. Zorro and Amigo's perilous situation within the fortress is something that called back to the similar cliffhanging scenarios Zorro faced in the chapters of Zorro's Fighting Legion. Captain Ramon takes possession of Fray Gaspar's mission in the episode Fort Ramon, as he plans to build a new fort within the establishment for the supposed purposes of halting smuggling activities. After Ramon has Fray Gaspar arrested for negating Ramon's commanding of the mission, Zorro and Amigo rescues Gaspar, and, after hiding the Fray from Ramon's forces, Zorro and Amigo attempt to penetrate the fort and disrupt its construction. But after Amigo ultimately ends up being captured by Ramon, Zorro must try once again to infiltrate the fort to rescue his friend and restore the mission. Taking into account Robbie London's fondness of swashbuckling stories, there are certain aspects in this episode that could echo details from Sir Walter Scott's historic medieval adventure novel Ivanhoe, such as Zorro helping Fray Gaspar recover his mission from the usurping Ramon, somewhat the same way the rogue Robin Hood, with his merry men, assists Squire Gurth in rescuing Lord Cedric's party from Baron Front de Boeuf, and just as crusading knight Ivanhoe, disguised as a palmer, rescues Jewish merchant Isaac from the treacherous knight Brian de Boisguibert's plot to rob and kidnap him, so does Zorro, posing as a monk, intending to enter Ramon's fort to rescue his friend Miguel. A coup d'etat is in progress in the 10th installment, The Takeover, where bandit General Velasco has the Governor-General kidnapped, along with Diego de la Vega's companion Maria, and forces the Governor-General to sign Velasco's alter ego, Juan Marcos, as the new Governor-General of California. However, after Juan Marcos presents himself as the new Governor-General to Captain Ramon, the latter has him arrested as Ramon removes the governor's ring from Marcos' hand and puts it on himself, claiming to be the new Governor-General. Zorro must free Velasco so to take him to where Maria and the Governor-General are being kept and rescue them. This is another episode that can recall another episode from the Disney Zorro show, that being Slaves of the Eagle, as it displayed a criminal forcibly taking the place of the tax collector of Los Angeles and ultimately puts in jail a great number of taxpayers after imposing unpayable high taxes, and then sets them up to be sold as slaves. A young writer named Carlos, who is Maria's cousin, is inspired to pose as Zorro after doing research on the masked outlaw, an action that leads him to take on Captain Ramon's men as they are collecting taxes. After Carlos is incapacitated, he is incarcerated by Ramon and intends to claim publicly that he has captured Zorro, so to lure the real Zorro to try and rescue Carlos so to capture him. The concept of a privileged youngster being driven to assume the identity of a highwayman is something that was touched upon in the 1915 Ruritarian romance adventure novel The Rider by Tarzan's scribe Edgar Rice Burroughs, which featured a rebellious Carlovian prince who switches roles with a notorious brigand called the Rider. Lucia the pirate returns in the episode Conspiracy, as she and her mates attempt to elude a galleon carrying a fortune in taxes heading for Spain. But unbeknownst to her, Zorro is also planning to obtain the wealth so to give back to the people. And to outwit her, he assumes the place of her first mate so to take advantage of Lucia's manpower and her cannons to obtain the wealth. But he must also contend with Captain Ramon, who is on the trail for them with his garrison. Zorro infiltrating a pirate ship disguised as someone else with the pursuit of obtaining a prize is a tactic that can be compared with that of the character Navy Lieutenant Robert Maynard's ploy of posing as a surgeon aboard the pirate ship of Blackbeard the Pirate in the 1952 movie that shares the pirate's name, for the purpose of earning a reward by proving the pirate activities of a privateer. And with Zorro disguised as a pirate, there's also a possible nod to Zorro actors Douglas Fairbanks and Tyrone Power, who after both portrayed Zorro in the original 1920 silent film and 1940 remake respectively, played the lead as pirates in 1926's The Black Pirate and 1942's The Black Swan, respectively. In the final episode, The Mysterious Traveler, Captain Ramon has a traveling noblewoman arrested for refusing to pay Ramon's tax. And after Zorro and Amigo rescue her, Ramon threatens to arrest innocent people until the visiting woman is turned over to him. Zorro and Amigo defy Ramon's threats and decide to go rescue the unjustly imprisoned people at the risk of capture. However, unbeknownst to everyone, the traveling woman is someone connected to Spanish royalty who came to visit with a lingering plan. The roguish Zorro coming to the aid of a woman of noble stature from bandits is an element that can be compared with another one found in James Fenimore Cooper's 1757 novel Last of the Mohicans, that being the aspect of outsider frontiersman Natty Bumppo rescuing two daughters of a lieutenant colonel from rebel Hurons. I hope I've laid down sufficient content to have convinced you all who are fans of animation, especially throwback animation and anime, as well as fans of Zorro and pulpy swashbuckling adventure, why Filmation's New Adventures of Zorro is a fun treat worth checking out. It's a show that really feels like a Zorro comic series come to life, or like the kind of comic adaptations by Roy Thomas, Doug Mensch, and Don McGregor of literary classics. New Adventures of Zorro episodes can be found on YouTube, Dailymotion, and Facebook. You can also hunt down the 2000s DVD editions online, either on eBay or Amazon. So that's our review. Hope you enjoyed it. If so, please give it a like, make sure you subscribe and hit that bell, and feel free to leave your comments below. And I'll be seeing you soon. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.